So welcome back. This evening we're going to work with adding and subtracting decimals. Again, we're going to deal with rational numbers. Remember, rational numbers are any numbers that can be expressed as fractions. And one of the things we learned that when you are adding decimals, you want to line up the decimal. But also have to kind of follow the rules of positive and negative numbers as we go along. So I have 5.4 plus a negative 9.4. So 5 and 4/10 plus negative 9 and 4/10. Now, when we talk about positive and negative numbers, we recognize this is like income and this is like debt. Even though this says addition, income, all it's going to do is remove some of my debt out of the problem. So what I pick up on, this is actually a subtraction problem. So I have a 9.4 subtract 5.4. Again, when you subtract, it's always imperative to have the bigger number on top. So my decimals are lined up. 4 minus 4 is going to give me my 0. 9 minus 5 will give me 4, so I get this 4.0. Now, once I look back at the problem, though, I have to look and say, hey, it's more negative than it is positive, so therefore my answer is going to be a negative 4.0 as an answer. You also could look at that as just a negative 4. You could just drop the decimal in that problem. Number 2, I have 10.8 plus negative 4.75. Again, that's 10 and 8/10 plus negative 4 and 75 hundredths. Right now, they don't go out to the same decimal place, so it's a good idea to make sure your decimals go out to the same decimal place. Since this goes out 2 places, it's a good idea to make this go out 2 places. The other thing I pick up on is my debt is going to remove some of my income. So I kind of see this as a subtraction problem. So 10.8, and I'm going to subtract 4.75. I need to put that 0 there to help me keep my subtraction going. So I can't just bring that 5 down. I actually got to borrow and make that a 10. So I also see that I can't do this math over here, so I can borrow and make that a 10. So I have 10 minus 5 is 5, 7 minus 7 was 0, 10 minus 4 is 6. And I recognize that it's more positive than negative, so 6.05 would be my result. And don't forget, if you add 6.05 back to 4.75, it should get me back to my 10.8. So let's see if that actually works for me. So 6.05 plus 4.75, 5 and 5 is 10, carry a 1, there's my 8, 6 and 4 is 10, 10.80. Yeah, that's the same thing as 10.8, so that does check out. So 6.05 would be my result, so 6 and 5/100ths. If you look at this problem, notice how this is a subtraction problem. We really like to make these addition problems. So what I do is see this as what we call terms. So I see the first term and I see the second term. So what I actually see is negative 8.1 and the opposite of negative 8.9 is the same thing as 8.9. So we kind of gather that those two negatives actually are going to make that a positive, because a negative also stands for the opposite, and the opposite of a negative 8.9 is a positive 8.9. So there's my new problem, and since I have debt and income, the debt is going to remove some of my income, and I'm seeing that it's a subtraction problem. 8.9 take away 8.1. Looks like I'm going to get an 8 and a 0, 0.8. And since the 8.9 is larger, that stays as a positive value. So 8/10 would be my answer. So again, I see a subtraction problem. And again, I like to look at this as terms. So I have the first term and I have the second term. So I have this and I have this. And when I hear that word and, that kind of tells me that I can write this as an addition problem. So negative 3.9 and a negative 8.9. So what I'm saying is, if you have debt added to more debt, that just makes a bigger value. So this tells me just to add these together. So as a sidebar, I'm going to have 8.9 plus 3.9. Again, since it's addition, order doesn't matter there. 9 and 9 is 18, carry my 1. 9 plus 3 is 12. I end up with 12 and 8/10. So I have 12.8. But I gotta remember though that a negative and a negative just makes a bigger negative, so I can't forget about my sign. So not only not working with decimals, but also gotta pay attention to how it works with positive and negative numbers. So when we add a negative to another negative, it just makes a bigger negative. So I gotta keep that sign as a negative. So negative 12 and 8/10 would be my solution. So in question 5, I have a negative 5.6 as the first term, and I have the opposite of negative 12.6, and I have a negative 6.6. So I'm going to rewrite that as an addition problem. Negative 5.6 plus, and the opposite of negative 12.6 is really just 12.6. So we can rewrite that to 12.6. And then I have a negative 6.6. What I would see in this problem, I have 3 things to add together, but I really like to put things together first. So a negative and a negative, I would just add those together. So I would go 5.6 plus 6.6. Again, line my decimals up. 6 and 6 makes 12, carry by 1. That's going to make it 12, so 12.2. But I got to remember that since this is a negative and this is a negative, my answer still stays negative. So notice how when I do my work, I can leave the negative out, but I have to come back and revisit it though. Since I'm dealing with a negative and a negative, that answer still has to remain as a negative. And then I'm adding a 12.6 to that. Now we kind of see again, this is debt and income. That debt is going to remove some of my income. So it tells me to kind of subtract. So I have 12.6, and I'm going to subtract that 12.2. And I'm getting, looks like a 0.4. So 0.4. I also have to revisit, was it more income or more debt? Well, since there was more income, my final result ends up being a positive value. So there's revisiting some issues with decimals and also working with positive and negative numbers. Stay tuned.